I'm finally getting myself recorded after all these years trying to get myself recorded. And my few talks that I give, only given about 5 or 6. And are we going?
Yep.
You want to do your spiel?
Yeah, welcome to the Wooden Shoe. If you've never been here, you're very welcome. And if you're here all the time, you're especially welcome. And we do a lot of events. We want to especially thank James for coming all the way down from Boston.
Welcome.
Hope the trip was good.
It was.
And I just want to announce a few events coming up. Every Sunday we have a free movie night. So this one coming up is called La Chinese. Probably pronounced that wrong. And it has, it's kind of one of these situationist type films. There's political violence, Maoist pop music, living room, Becktism, primary colors, and the correct mass line. So make sure you come out to that. Next week we have with Canadian author and activist A.K. Thompson, Black Bloc, White Riot. I mixed that up. Anti-globalization and the genealogy of dissent. And then we have a Know Your Rights training with the National Lawyers Guild on Thursday. So Black Bloc, White Riot on Tuesday, Know Your Rights on Thursday. Yeah, I mean, I've met James once before.
Mm-hmm.
I've read his book, which doesn't look like we have right now.
Out of print, my fault.
Oh, is it? I didn't realize that.
Well, there are only 378 copies printed.
I do own one copy.
I've
so
been
if anyone wants to borrow
procrastinating
mine.
for a year. I'll do it soon.
But yeah, does anybody else? Scott, do you want to say a few words about James?
Oh, Scott's going to introduce me. Oh my God.
Preparing remarks, but I met James in 2004 organizing a conference in Lawrence, Kansas, and read his book, Getting Free, and read a lot of his work that really chronicles kind of decades of scholarly work, trying to theorize what a revolution would look like and how we're going to get there. So I'm really excited to hear what James has to say, and I'm excited to discussion here at the Wooden Shoe, and thanks to James from the Wooden Shoe for helping set this up.
And thanks to Scott for setting me up for this talk. We've got one half. We have a logistic problem first on the packets. What happened to them? There, I have 17 packets. Oh, there. And I thought there's plenty for everyone, but I was going to say just one per household and just one for people. I mean, don't take one unless you're really interested in doing work on this topic. But so we have plenty. I have 17 copies. So, and 4 people are already covered. And so, if you want one, it's got 51 items in it, and it's. One of my purposes in coming in the talk is to try to encourage other people to study this topic. So I've compiled a packet of materials to assist. It includes a bunch of essays about historical events like the sans-culottes and the French Revolution, essays like that. And then I have included the list of anarchist economic studies by the Anarcho-Syndicalist Review, the list of ZNet's project of reimagining society, stuff like that. So if you're interested in imagining anarchy, this is the packet to start with. So that said, with the logistics out of the way, so I'm going to be covering a lot of material tonight. I'm going to go clipping through it, and I'm going to be handing out four handouts we'll discuss. So we're going to move right along, but before I start, I want to interject a note of urgency in dealing with this question. Last year I got invited to the Cambridge emergency Congress on climate change. And so I started looking into this issue, and I wrote up a paper on it, and got published in the Anarchist Syndicalist Review, this issue on climate change. And so here's the urgency. We have 20, 30 years at the most to defeat capitalists, or we die. Now, this may seem like an extreme statement, but it is extreme, and I think it's correct. I think that's what the facts show. It's not. It's the entire Earth will die because of the irreversible global warming that will happen once we pass certain tipping points, and we have 30 years to not pass those tipping points. Anyway, that's just a whole nother topic, and I probably shouldn't have said this because you're going to think I'm a nut right off the bat. But read this essay, and we'll go from there. But even aside from the fact that they're on the verge of killing the earth and all life on it, the crimes of capitalists now are so horrendous. They're just mind-boggling. They've always been mind-boggling, but just to mention two or three others, we're coming up to peak oil. That's whole. Just imagine the cities in the world, the huge cities, all based on cheap oil, and it's coming to an end. And they're not. We can't deal with the problem because we have no control over decision making in the hands of the capitalists, and so that's a crisis. Genetically modified organisms is an unbelievable crime. Iraq. I mean, imagine in this day and age, one country can just go and kill 1 million and over 1 million people, and wound another million, and drive 4 million people out of 25 million out of their homes, 2 million out of the country, completely destroy the country, completely destroy the sewage system, the water system, the healthcare. They murdered the top echelon of the whole educational system, systematic death squads. They killed, it was only 180 people they killed, but these were the heads of the departments, and it's scared enough that the educated middle class just left. So that's an unbelievable crime. So we got the list of crimes of capitalists is endless. Rwanda genocide, junk food, Wall Street bailout, austerity problems, the baby seal kill, prison industrial complex, billions for weapons, unbelievable waste, massive poverty, homelessness, disease, sea bottom dredging, whale hunting, dolphin kills and tuna nets. You know, it goes on. We can't stop capitalists one crime at a time. Their crimes are endless. We have to stop the system. We have to stop the essence of capitalists. I wanted to say a word about the no blueprints argument, but I won't spend a lot of time on this. That there's, for over 100 years, it's pretty much been banned that you can't talk about the future, and you still get this argument constantly. We can't really talk. It's up to the people who make the revolution. Marx started this. He refused to speculate much on what communism would really look like. And I heard the argument just a few months ago in Boston. The Greek anarchists, the insurrection anarchists came through, and I asked them, what are you going to do after you burn all the banks down? And they refused to talk about it. They said, oh, well, that's a complicated topic, and we'll talk about that in private, but it's not subject for public discussion. And so this is that same thing, refusal to even try to outline. So that's what my talk is about, imagining anarchy. And fortunately, anarchists have pretty much ignored this. Peter Kropotkin wrote detailed empirical studies infused with history and everything theory, and he mapped it out. And this packet has, I've collected all the current stuff. Gelderloos just wrote a nice piece on the answer to global warming, but it's a picture of anarchist society. So there's a lot of work to build on. So I'll leave that. There are also postmodernists and primitivists who have refused to do this. But anyway, I didn't, and here we are. So actually, I've been interested in this topic for quite some time. And after a half-hour search through some very dusty file cabinets in the basement, I found the original document that I printed up. The Black Panthers in 1970 had organized, they were going to organize a constitutional convention and write a new constitution. And they had a preliminary run-up in September in Philadelphia. And so we came down here, and I was so disappointed with what happened at that conference that I went home and wrote up a constitution, proposed draft constitution for our post-revolutionary society. And I'd only been a radical for 2 years, so this is the first attempt. I remember typing this on a standalone, IBM standalone Selectric in the loft of the Liberated Guardian, which was underground newspaper we were putting out, and all alone. And then I had to take. This was made. Do you know what a stencil is? You had to cut stencils. It was a blue sheet. It was kind of a wax stuff, and you type it, and then if you make a mistake, there's this glue that you can put on it and retype it. So then I took the stencils over to this organization I was working with, Committee of Returned Volunteers. And they had a mimeograph machine, so there it is, 1970. So the years went by, they flew by, and what should have been, we knew what the questions were at that time. What do we want? That's a question we can never ask. What do we want? How do we get it? So for me, the question always was the goal and the strategy. But the years went by, and I blame it on the counter-revolution. I wasn't fucking up. It was the counter-revolution that did it. So anyway, in 1996, 26 years later, another picture of the future gelled out. And I call it a notion of how we might want to live. And I boiled down the goal of human liberation into 2 pages. So when you do that, you're bound to cut some flax, right? Some flack. So I did. A great scholar told me, I always thought of this as a beautifully simple and elegant statement of our beliefs and what we want. He said, James, this is not simple, it's simplistic. So that hurt a little bit. But then I realized that, well, great scholars can be wrong. You know, we know they can. So I went on. So anyway, I'll get to this at the end. So that's the 70, my synthesis. In the past 15 years, there's been an incredible outflowing of work on this topic, finally. Unfortunately, I have a list here. Another project I'm working on is called Thinking the Future Badly. It's not in the packet. I didn't have it well enough up, but there are all kinds of, almost none of this work is from an anarcho-communist perspective. I'm so disappointed. But there's all kinds of people writing. David Schweiker, After Capitalism, he's a market socialist. And then these are all famous people. David Korten established the Yes website, writes books like crazy, has a book called The Post-Corporate World. Gar Alperovitz, he's a famous scholar. He wrote the book about the atomic bomb which showed they didn't have to drop it. Envisioning Real Utopia is a famous New Left Review editor and scholar. So the stuff is coming out, and so what I wanted to do, here's our first handout, is to give you a guideline for further research if you want to get into this topic. And it's, I won't spend any time on this, just it's there, you can use it. It's a list of principles, historical movements, and specific problems, I was going to work up bibliography for this, but I ran out of time. And so what I'm going to do today is pick a few historical cases and a few theoretical cases, and then we'll try to wrap it up. And I don't know how long this talk is going to take. I'm going to zip through it. Okay, the first case will be the Diggers in the English Revolution, 1640, 45 to 46. There was a theoretician, one of the activists there, Gerard Winstanley, and it was an incredible. The printing press wasn't that old, and it was the first chance that ordinary people had a chance to get into print. So Gerard Winstanley published all these pamphlets between 1646 and 1652, and he showed a remarkable evolution from sort of an orthodox religious person to secular anarcho-communist. And his last book was 1652, called The Law of Freedom. There's stuff in here on that. Basically, he had all the principles of anarcho-communism right there. Common ownership of the land, getting rid of the ruling class. The concept I want to call attention to is the communal storehouse. I have that idea in my book, communal storehouse, but I didn't realize that it goes clear back to 1650 to Winstanley. I don't know where I got it, but it's in the air. I mean, and then studying up for this, I realized that William Morris, I'll talk about him shortly, he had the concept of storehouse. So, okay, let's jump to the American Revolution. The first American Revolution in 1774. There's a book out by Roy Raphael called The First American Revolution. And it happens in 1774-75. The people of Massachusetts completely overthrew the British colonial government. There wasn't outside of Boston, there wasn't a single official left. Everyone was gone. The judges and the soldiers and everyone, and they were running the state on the basis of direct democracy based on townships. It was one of the longest running experiments in direct democracy, and it's hardly even known about in America, American Revolution, 1774 to 70. Decentralized, directly democratic self-government based on town meetings. So there we have the original communist thing. The Diggers weren't, it was a very small group. All they did was plant some stuff in an abandoned field. But they hadn't, but what they wrote up was different, but they didn't have meetings themselves. Okay, let's go to the French Revolution, sans-culottes. Most of the ideas of anarchism, socialism, communism appeared in the French Revolution. Unfortunately, the anarchist stuff is virtually unknown, but a few people have picked up on it. The sans-culottes were the most radical element in the French Revolution, and turns out that between them and the peasant revolt, the bourgeoisie could never have won a revolution without this grassroots underground support. So they're important because the sans-culottes means without breeches. In those days, the rich people wore silk breeches that came off the knee, and the poor people wore trousers that went all the way down. So that's all it means, is the tradesmen and working class people wore trousers, and that's how they got their name, but they were radical. So here's the significant thing. Paris was divided into 48 sections, and they established assemblies in each of the 48 sections, and they declared their autonomy. It was an incredible thing, and they were so radical. They wanted the egalitarian structure. They wanted to get rid of the ruling class. They didn't want to have government. They wanted to have self-government on a local level. So they were there throughout the French Revolution, but then they came to prominence in 1792 to 95 until they were crushed by the Robespierre and the beginning of the Terror. They were just demolished. But so there's one funny thing in one of the essays I read about. They were having trouble finding a place to meet. And I thought that was so funny because in Boston we can't find a place to meet. And they were complaining about how chaotic their meetings were and unorganized. And how true is that today? Unbelievable. So let's jump to, this is good. Covering the entire history in 5 minutes. So let's jump to the Paris Commune. All right. Let's set the scenes here. On the sans-culottes, there was a struggle within the assemblies between the sans-culottes and the more well-to-do people. So there was this tension. But they had the assemblies, and they were there debating, fighting it out. Okay, the Paris Commune. Well, let's set the scene here. Germany invaded France in the Franco-Prussian War, and they surrounded Paris. It was under siege. The government fled to Versailles. So they left Paris without a government. So the people of Paris said, let's hold elections, set up our own government. So they did, and this famous event actually only lasted 2 months. It was established on March 28, 1871, and it was crushed on May 28th, 2 months later. But it's significant is that the Paris Commune, which was composed of 81 delegates from all the various districts of Paris, it was a representative assembly. It wasn't direct democracy, but these were radicals. 18 from rich families, but mostly radical. 30 from professional class, but many radicals. 35 from tradespeople and laborers, and they were mostly radical. The significance was that they said, we're an autonomous city. You're not going to govern us anymore. So you got two things here. You got the assertion of autonomy. You got the assembly. I always pay attention to the assemblies. In addition to the assembly, they formed social clubs to just deal with everything. It was described as a festival of the oppressed. They were having a really good time, and they totally underestimated how hard they were going to get hit. They just didn't believe that. They thought they might be, banned or something, but they didn't anticipate a slaughter of 30,000 people. All right, so up to now we've got townships in Massachusetts, the Paris Commune Assembly, the assemblies in Paris in the French Revolution, so it's kind of community assembly focused. All right, around the 1890 there was a syndicalist turn. I call it the syndicalist turn. Beginning then, revolutions started throwing up workers' councils. So this was all the main revolutions in Europe at that time. The main ones were Russia's 1905, 1917, Germany, 1918, 19 Italy, 1920, Spain, 1936, Hungary, 1956, Portugal, 1974, 75, Poland, 1980. These were all based on the syndicalist model. What is that? Okay, the syndicalist model is simple and it's been repeated dozens of times. Workers seize their factories or workplaces and they federate these councils on the state and regional level. And excuse me, I might have trouble coughing. I've had a cold and my throat is, I hope it doesn't get too bad. I'll have to slow down. So that's the syndicalist model. You seize the factory, set up councils, send delegates to local, regional, national levels, and you create a dual structure, and eventually that replaces the state. That's a tricky part, though, right? They haven't quite ever done it, and they don't even theorize it very well. So I want to deal with just 2 case studies on the syndicalist model, and then we'll get to anarcho-communism and the theoretical sketches. The Spanish Revolution, 1936 to 1939, but basically the defeat was assured by the Spanish Revolution started July 19th, 1936, and the revolutionary impulse was crushed in May 1970, May 1937, when they took when Barcelona was defeated. But the war dragged on for another 3 years. But the significance, well, listen to the background. Okay, the background is 50 years of anarchist organizing, basically a peasant society. The only industrial area was in Barcelona. It's the greatest revolution for liberation so far in history. It was just unbelievable. But the conditions were such that the thought that this could happen again is next to a fantasy. What they did was they collectivized everything. So it was a combination of workers seizing their factories and peasants seizing agriculture. The reason it has an anarcho-communist tinge is because in the countryside, although the peasants were basically seizing production, they did it through their village councils. So they dealt with a lot of other stuff at the same time. So it took on a more of a communal aspect in the countryside, but that wasn't true in the factories. But for a while, certain large sections of Spain were totally collectivized, and they seized the land. The church was a big actor. The church owned an enormous amount of land, and that was seized. I want to call attention also to the fact that in this revolution, the union played a big role. It wasn't a horizontally organized network of councils. It was councils that sent delegates to the union. They were unionized, so the union was the main spokesperson. Although I think the different trades and different kinds of work they did federate industries, but nevertheless the union was a key thing. And of course the union, to put it simply, and no one knows what, the CNT turned against they sold it out. I mean, people who know Spanish history are going to get me on that one. But so, and I have problems with the union thing. Okay, let's go to Poland, 1980-81, and it's this was an incredible uprising. Started with a strike in linen shipyards in Poland on the Baltic Sea, and it spread rapidly. It, again, was a union thing, and when I started going over this, preparing for this talk, I realized that it wasn't quite what I thought it was. I thought there had been councils established everywhere, but actually it was, the Polish uprising in 1980 was mostly strikes and occupations. They didn't really set up councils. But what they did was the students occupied universities, farmers occupied various important buildings, miners occupied mines, and factory workers occupied factories. So this could have been, And then there was a debate. This started in August 1980 and was crushed in December of 1981. Lasted 16 months. So, in the middle of that, they had this huge debate. Well, should we have workers' councils? Maybe should we go council system? Oh no, we can't. We got to be. Then the radicals wanted to do that. They wanted to have councils and they wanted to go after the state. But most people, there was this debate there was this ambivalence toward the state. A terrible mistake. So I have in here the Polish Solidarity Program, which they mapped. It was a very democratic process, but it was based on the Union. So they got together in September of 1981 and put forth this problem. In the program, and you read it, you could see their ambivalence about the state. They were trying to negotiate with the state rather than just replace it. They also, it was Eastern Europe, and they were, even in 1980, which I think would be naive to think that you should go to the World Trade Organization for help, or the World Bank. They wanted to negotiate with the World Bank. So, okay, so anyway, but that's another case of syndicalist organization connected with the Union. Oh, now, I'm going to consider some theoretical sketches. Oh, can I go to 8:15? Hopefully. I didn't start till 7:15. We'll see if people start getting. Okay, this is going to be fun. Oh, you can pass this out. As a theoretical sketch of syndicalist organization, this woman, Sylvia Pankhurst. We got some famous Sylvias these days. Have you read Sylvia Federici's book, Caliban and the Witch? It's the greatest masterpiece. So anyway, everybody have a copy of this? You pass it around? You can see what the syndicalist model is. They have Soviets for everything. The unique thing about Sylvia Pankhurst's model is that she included households. She wanted to have councils for women. That's unique. I've never seen that anywhere else. So this was published in 1920 in the Workers' Dreadnought in Britain. She was one of the people that Lenin attacked in left-wing communism, infantile disorder, and she was fantastic. I remember in the mid-'80s, drove out to Amherst, Massachusetts. They had a microfilm set of the Workers' Dreadnought, and I printed it out on this chemical paper. But I just wanted to show you that as a short version of a system based on Soviets, or Soviet. That's the word, Soviet word for council. Okay, now we'll come to Castoriadis. You want to pass this out? This is probably the most thorough statement of an anarcho-syndicalist vision. And guess what? Philadelphia Solidarity, right here. Here we are. They published this 1974. Yeah? I didn't hear that. What did you say?
They founded the Wooden Shoe.
Oh, they founded the Wooden Shoe. Excellent. Well, this is a wonderful pamphlet. Castoriadis, do you know Castoriadis? He became our most brilliant philosopher of autonomy and direct democracy, and he sort of renounced this work. This was part of this was published in Socialism or Barbarism magazine they were doing. But the funny thing is, they have all these. The Wooden Shoe version has all these wonderful comic things. It's really great. So he sort of abandoned this. Went on to write a lot of really heavy-duty theoretical works on imagining institutions. But I read his shorter essays mostly for the autonomy. But I wanted to. Did everybody get a copy of that? Did I save a copy for myself? I need a copy of Castoriadis. Okay, so here he pictures. You can see it. It's the industrial enterprise, rural communes, and professionals. That's kind of unique. He stuck professionals in there. But it's basically the same thing. You have assemblies on all these levels. And what he means by council, it's delegates. Each assembly selects delegates. And they have a council. So the factories have an assembly. They select delegates. That's the factory council. It's sort of a smaller group to run things. And then you have a general assembly of delegates. So that's the... And then the General Assembly has a council. So this is his view of how to organize society. And at one place in this book, he collapses all the other stuff in society into the workers' councils. He said, "Well, we'll just run everything through the workers' councils." Okay, I'll be saying some problems I have with this later. So anyway, that's that. All right. Oh. Okay, this is going to take 10 minutes. I hope you won't mind if I just read it. I've written a critique of anarcho-syndicalism. It's 3 pages. And then we get to anarcho-communism. See, I think there was a turn, a shift. And finally, we're getting back to anarcho-communism. It's back on the agenda. The 3 main historical strategies have failed. The 2 main ones were Marxist-Leninism, seize the state, use the state to get to communism. Social Democrats, win the elections, capture the state, use the state to get to communism. And then there was an anarchist version, which is sort of on the historical stage. It was anarcho-syndicalism. Seize the factories, set up federated councils, and dual power, get rid of capitalism. So I think history, I think it's possible for us at this point to see more clearly what we want and how to get it, because history has actually swept the table for us. I mean, that's swept this away. They're gone. There's nothing left of them. Okay, so I'm just going to read this quickly. I can do it in 5 minutes. It means anarcho-syndicalism. It locates decision-making in the wrong place, exclusively with workers rather than with people in general in their autonomous communities. It locks the revolution into the capitalist division of labor. There's no way for workers in a given enterprise to decide to dismantle the operation because their livelihoods are connected to it. They have no way to live without that income. Anarcho-syndicalism does not provide a way out of this. That is, it does not create other sources of support for these workers. This can only be done through the community. 3, it fails to take into account how the content of work has changed over the past half century. Vast millions of people are now engaged in absolutely worthless work. This work should be abandoned, not seized. 4, it has no way to deal with the new massive change in the capitalist labor market, namely temp work. These workers are not attached to any particular workplace, but move frequently amongst many. Thus, they are not in a position to seize anything, nor would they ever want to. 5, it cannot escape the capitalist commodity market. Even if all the workplaces in the entire nation were seized, each enterprise would still be dependent on selling to the market in order to survive. All we would have would be a nation full of worker-owned capitalist firms. They would have no way to, nor incentive to launch and pursue a society-wide decommodification program including the decommodification of labor and the transition from wage labor to cooperative labor, which can only be done on the community level. 6, it has failed to take into account our improved understanding of capitalism, namely that capitalists over the past centuries have managed to turn the entire society into the means of production, into a social factory, for the purpose of accumulating more capital. Thus, seizing explicit workplaces doesn't, in fact, amount to seizing the means of production. And hence we had the Wages for Housework campaign. 7, it mistakes what needs to be seized, thinking that is the means of production, whereas in fact it is all decision making that must be taken away from the ruling class and relocated in our communities. 8, it encourages wage slaves to identify themselves as workers. Thus it perpetuates and in fact fosters this false identity. It tries to bring into being a class consciousness based on work, a working class consciousness. This is needed in order to seize workplaces, syndicalists think. But the original goal of the communist revolution was to abolish wage slavery, abolish workers as workers, abolish the proletariat, abolish the whole class. That is, wage slaves were to abolish themselves as wage slaves. Their identities lie elsewhere. As it happened, hardly anyone identifies with their work anymore, nor should they. They know they are more than just workers. Their identities lie elsewhere with family, friends, avocation, leisure activities, playing, community. They are human beings with many interests and identities. They have given up the identity of worker, if they ever had it, but still have to keep doing their job in order to live. And that's all it is, just a way to make a living. Wage slavery can only be abolished by converting to cooperative labor. Trying to foster a working class consciousness is no way to do this. It can only be done in communities. 9, it keeps the revolution focused mistakenly on the struggle between commodified labor and capital. This is in here because of John Holloway's new book on crack capitalism. If you haven't, it's a marvelous book, you should read it. Thus blocking the struggle to reestablish non-commodified labor, use value labor, as opposed to exchange value labor. The return to useful labor cannot be done within an anarcho-syndicalist framework, but only within an anarcho-communist framework. 10, it leaves out huge swaths of people, the unemployed, old people, sick people, young people, students, housewives. These people can only serve as support troops in a revolution defined as the means of seizing the means of production, which in turn is defined as seizing factories, office stores, or farms. The idea that only people with jobs can play a direct role in revolution is seriously mistaken. 11, it has the wrong attitude toward peasants and petty bourgeois, meaning small business families and small farmers, self-employed professionals, and tradespeople. These categories of people tend to be seen as enemies rather than as potential allies, and indeed, in the anarcho-syndicalist model, there's no role for them in the revolution. 12 is based on the form of representative democracy, federation, that is, delegates to regional national assemblies, rather than on direct democracy. It thus nowhere overcomes this bourgeois hierarchical structure. 13 is often linked with unions which are organized outside workplaces. These unions can and often have betrayed the working class when the crunch comes. 2 significant cases were the CNT in the Spanish Revolution and the Polish Solidarity in the Polish Revolution. 14, the dual power structure which anarcho-syndicalists establish is static with regard to the capitalist state. How exactly is it possible to ever move from a dual power structure to a single power structure, that is, to the elimination of the state? The strategy is not equipped to do this and is thus silent on the question, and it has never been done. 15, is no way to deal with counter-revolutionary parties that are organized outside the structure of federal workers' councils. Thus, the Bolsheviks were able to destroy the Soviets. Franco was able to destroy collectivized Spain. Social Democrats were able to destroy the Workers' and Solidarity and Soldiers' Council in Germany in 1918. Anarcho-syndicalism could attempt to organize its own army, but this couldn't be done through the Federated Workers' Councils. 16 and last is anarcho-syndicalism derailed for over a century The original goal of all 19th century anti-capitalist radicals, whether communist, socialist, or anarchist, of restoring power to local communities and of establishing a commune of communes without markets, money, wage slavery, or states. It sidelined anarcho-communism. Instead, an artifact of capitalism itself, the capitalist workplace was taken as the main organizing arena of the anti-capitalist struggle. This strategy has failed through a century of trials. So that doesn't mean that I don't think organizing workplaces is important, but I just see it differently. I see it as workers setting up assemblies and networking those assemblies across the workplaces. It's very important to keep workplaces in the picture. So I have a three-pronged strategy: workplaces, neighborhoods, and households. I'll get that's not a part of this, but well, okay, I'm going to have to skip some of this. I think, as I said, anarcho-communism is back on the agenda. In fact, wonderful screw top. You never miss. It just, you're in. You have one of those bottles that you can't get it to go. So I have a paper called, it's not finished, but called The Grand Convergence. Possible. I changed the title to A Possible Grand Convergence. I think it is possible. There's so many things, like on that list I handed out, all these eco villages, transition towns, urban gardening, sustainable agriculture, just a whole long list of projects that could converge, but I'm not sure they will. So I want to talk about that. And last night I decided, and I guess now is the time to do it. I was going to do it earlier, but actually I'm almost finished. I wanted to inject another theme into my talk. It makes it more complicated, but I think it'll get us to a better place in the end. And I'm at that point now where this is important. I want to read a passage from my book. We must always remember how we became slaves. Then we can see more clearly how we can cease being slaves. We were forced into wage slavery because the ruling class slowly, systematically, and brutally destroyed our ability to live autonomously. By driving us off the land, changing property laws, dismantling community rights, destroying our tools, imposing taxes, gutting our local markets, and so forth, we are forced onto the labor market in order to survive. Our only remaining option being to sell our labor, our ability to work for a wage. It's quite clear then how we can overthrow slavery. We must reverse this process. We must begin to reacquire the ability to live without working for a wage or buying the products made by wage slaves. Okay, I'll just make a short statement on the essence of capitalism. Capitalism has been described as a system that commodifies everything. Stop. Rewind. We have to pay attention to the words we use, and especially abstractions. What I should have said was capitalist, not capitalism. Capitalist. Capitalism doesn't do a thing. It's an abstraction. Capitalists are people who want to commodify everything. Now, this is a concrete statement. It identifies exactly who the enemy is, what they're doing, what we have to do. So they've commodified everything, and they're still at it. They commodified the land. They're not trying to commodify water. Commodified means that they turn something, it can be a product or anything, a thought, into something they can sell on the market. And you make a profit off it. It's not from selling you make the profit, because everything that's made is from surplus. Workers make everything. But, okay, so here's the thing. In order to destroy capital, the most important thing they commodified was labor. They commodified human labor. So, and that's how they make profit. Commodified labor is unique, though, in the sense that human labor, labor, produces more wealth than is required to reproduce that labor. It's a unique, absolutely unique commodity. This is really the foundation for the whole system. I don't care what anybody says. It's the market and the commodified labor. And in order to destroy capitalism, we have to destroy this. We have to get out of labor for exchange. We have to get back to use value labor. We have to make a switch from selling our labor for a wage to cooperative labor. So that's the basis of the strategy. And actually, that's what this book is about. It's about how to make that switch and all the things we could do to do it. Now, I was going to mention some of the people on the anarcho-communist side. I was going to mention William Morris. I did mention him. It's a wonderful book. I'm ashamed to say I haven't read it, but I hear it's a wonderful book. News from Nowhere. He was a 19th century British socialist anarchist. He says he's not. Anyway, when preparing for this lecture, I discovered a book in my library that I didn't realize I had. It was a book of essays about News from Nowhere. And in there is a wonderful little essay on his economics. It's basically anarcho-communism. I mean, and he had the concept of a storehouse. But he mapped out basically all the stuff we want. And so anyway, I'm going to skip Ken Nab. I want to get to Fotopoulos. Yeah, this is a tragedy, and it's a reflection on our degraded intellectual culture in the United States, in that almost nobody knows Takis Fotopoulos. He's not read. He's an incredible scholar. He's a brilliant anarcho-communist, so we're reading John Zerzan. And anyway, I think a really good place to begin is with chapter 6 of his book, Towards an Inclusive Democracy, from which this diagram is. Does everyone have one so far? I'm going to get my copy. Oh, damn it, I had copies. Thank you. Now, this is the most concrete, down-to-earth attempt to picture how an anarcho-communist society would look like, how it would work. And of course, I have problems with it. That's what we do, right? We criticize. But anyway, this is something else. And you can see how he has, okay, let's see, we've got workplaces at the top. Over on the right, we have community assemblies, and we have workplace assemblies, and confederal. All of these people all are based on federation, the belief that we can delegate authority into regional assemblies. So there are several features I'll call your attention to. He separates NBVs as non-basic vouchers, and BV is a basic voucher. He separates basic goods from non-basic. That's the way he wants to sort of create some flexibility in consumption. Everybody gets basic stuff that's free. If you want non-basic luxury goods, you have to do extra work for it and get vouchers. I don't like this. I don't like splitting it into basic, and I don't like vouchers. Okay, on the work side, he's got index of desirability over on the left. That means people who won't sign up for any work, any particular job, means it has less desirability, right? And so that work gets more vouchers. It's a way of dealing with the problem of what to do about work nobody wants, so increase the incentive. And his prices aren't really prices. They're just a device, an accounting device, which juggles how many people want something versus how many people are willing to produce it. So what he's done here is, see the citizens decide down at the bottom? He's tried to make citizens have a role in consumption and work. So it's not just entirely communities and workplace. This is a little complicated, but anyway, it's worth studying. And my problem with Fotopoulos is that it's just too complicated. We don't need this. You don't need. He divides. He keeps the categories of economy and politics, for one thing. Those are totally false concepts and categories. We don't need these. You can't divide society and economic. There's no such thing as an economy. And you say that in this day and age, and they think you're crazy, but I believe it. So he wants to get rid of that eventually, but nevertheless, in his plans, he keeps it. So he has this concept of inclusive democracy, and he wants to expand democracy past the polity into the society, which is households and the workplace and the ecology. So, so that's Fotopoulos. Okay, now I urge you to study him, and because he deals with all the issues, and that we have to deal with. So if you can disagree with him, it's something. You're making progress toward understanding what's going on. So here's my sketch, which I'll now summarize for you. I just think we need basically direct democracy everywhere. So here's what I have. Households, by that I mean an expanded household, like they had in the Middle Ages, 100, 200 people. Projects, I got rid of the word workplace because I don't think we want to call anything a workplace. So we have projects, and how do you distinguish a project like for an orchestra from making a mine? Or, the things we're involved in is what we're doing, and they should be democratically run. So we have projects, and then you have neighborhood assemblies. So those are the three basic institutions: neighborhood assemblies, household assemblies, project assemblies, and they're self-governing. They're based on direct democracy. You don't have to have federation. You use negotiated agreements between assemblies. So this is something that that I'm all alone on. That I'm probably the only person who rejects federation that I know of. I think it's hierarchical, and I got a really good paper out of helping establish the Northeast Anarchist Network. It's called "Making Decisions Amongst Assemblies," and it's based on negotiated agreements. I just don't think that you can. I think the idea of recall is fallacious. The idea of a mandated delegate is fallacious, and the idea of separating administrative from policy is fallacious. So the whole concept is, and we don't need it. We can have direct democracy across territories. So this is a big change. We don't need unions. You need to organize and then establish networks across the assemblies. That way we're establishing the forms that we want to live in under anarchy, And they're also, nicely enough, the forms that we can use to defeat capitalists. Because through those forms, we can take decision-making away from capitalists. And we can shift from wage labor to cooperative labor. And another, a couple more unique features of the scheme is that I include households, establish communal storehouses. Oh, I've already mentioned all the. Well, here's some of the remaining things that have to be solved, which it's up to you all. How to abolish money. You can tackle that one. Get in on the fun. Making decisions amongst assemblies. I mentioned circulation of goods. This is a very thorny issue. How do you? We don't even want to use the word exchange because exchange is totally linked with markets. But we've got to have some way of finding out how much extra we have of something. Who wants it? I need to write up a more effective critique of federation. We need to work on how to effectively refute right-wing libertarianism. That's it. I got through it. Yeah, I've solved all the problems. Well, we need a lot of minds to deal with this. There's a lot of good work being done. It's just we have to bring it together. Like the social forums, they claim there is an alternative, but I've yet to see one that's plausibly mapped out. They haven't done it as far as I'm concerned. But there's good work. And in the packet is a bibliography called Preliminary Survey for Previous Proposed or Attempted Arrangements. This is a fairly extensive bibliography. I didn't manage to get it totally annotated. In fact, the annotations were taken from another document of mine. But this is in the packet if you want to continue this research.